Welcome, friends. November 16th, 2020. My name's Tom Yakopin, and this is the Tom Yakopin Podcast, a.k.a. Yakopinions. Welcome. Have some exciting things to share with you today. A great, I think, an intelligent and wonderful guest, Kristin Koltick. Thanks for being with us today. Most of you know, although the media did its level best to black out the Million MAGA March this weekend, but many of you who are following the election, who are interested in President Donald Trump and the patriotic Americans that support him, I know most of you saw the pictures that myself and many have posted, but I don't know how many of you know anybody that personally went or heard their story. I know Melanie Patterson from the Mon Valley area that we did the rally with the National Rock Band. She was there. I'm interested in hearing her take. But Kristin is a friend of mine. Actually, we've never chatted before. We've never
This is the first time.
It's awesome.
Asked you.
Yeah. But we've been friends on Facebook for probably a couple of years, and I've always appreciated your take on humanity. You seem like a wonderful human being. We probably share a lot of the same values. But I think it was a bold move for you to pony up and go there. And I'm looking forward to hearing, what you saw, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, the pictures were amazing. Of course, the mainstream media talked about it being a couple of thousand people. Talk to me. What was it like? What did you see? What was the experience?
The experience, it was a wild one. First of all, thank you for having me on. Like I said when we chatted a moment ago, I just always really appreciate an opportunity to get the truth out, especially when the media and social media is working so hard to keep us quiet right now. It was kind of an on a whim decision to go down to DC. And I don't know if you know much about me, but my degree is in social movements. And so I have, for 15 years now, been researching social, political, and cultural movements. And so this sort of communist revolution that's been going on in America for actually like 80 years, I have been talking about this for 15 years to anyone that would listen. And now we're at the point, as you know, where we're kind of at the catalyst for that. Mm-hmm. So I definitely wanted to be down there for the Mega March, but I'm a mom, I have a 7-year-old son, and I knew, it wasn't possibly the safest decision for me. And I really wanted to take my son with me, but that was totally out of the question, just because of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. There was rumors they were going to be there. Of course they were going to be there. But I have spent a good amount of time in DC over the years. Okay. And my parents took me there for the first time when I was a little kid. I grew up having the value of patriotism and grew up in a military family. So I have always loved Washington, D.C. And just rolling in there on Friday, it was shocking. It's only been about a year since I was there last, but it really felt like we were driving into North Korea. Wow. And I don't say that lightly. I've never been to North Korea, but from what I know about the state there, when you go into Washington, D.C. now, the entire city is boarded up. Every business is boarded up. And there is propaganda hanging on the fences, things that say, eviction notice, anti-Trump propaganda, things that are like vulgar and swearing that for whatever reason are just allowed to hang there in front of the White House and stuff. And it just really did kind of feel like something you would see in a documentary about communist China or North Korea. It was really shocking to me and unsettling. And you just got the sense that you didn't want to be alone wearing any type of, Trump gear or anything. Like, it just wasn't safe, And the first night, well, actually the only night that we spent there, because once we got in there, I couldn't wait to get out. The entire night at the hotel, we stayed in the city, and it was just loud. It was weird because it was an eerie quietness. There's not a lot of people out and about, but because the event was going on, there were people with megaphones from all hours of the night, and you almost couldn't tell, like, if it was conservatives or Antifa or BLM. It was just like an eerie feeling. I didn't even want to go out. We got Uber Eats because I was like, I don't want to be out on the streets after dark. And yeah, of course, the vibe totally changed for the actual event. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. The energy totally shifted. I could not believe, I mean, at the time that we were there, we hadn't yet seen any of the aerial photos.
Mm-hmm.
It was just people as far as the eye could see in every direction. I've been to my share of, rallies and protests throughout the years, but nothing like this. It was an incredible experience. I mean, I've never been in a place where there were so many people at one time.
Yeah, it looked huge. I mean, it looked unreal.
Yeah.
And yet I know that it was real. And, the business of vibration, what you said earlier, I think it was Tesla that said vibration is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I grew up, I'm 5 years younger than my sister, who grew up in the hippie, the Janis Joplin, Woodstock. And it was very common, he gives me a bad vibe, she's a good vibe, but it's real. And
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that I can be in a room where I feel, okay, I like it here. And then I've been with other people. It's not that they're bad people or good people. It's just, I've had that singeance, that feeling before. Mm-hmm. And I think it's real. And I'm interested, again, I'm interested in hearing. In fact, Brad and I have talked about interviewing some people who are progressives. I participate in some blogs, some chat rooms, against or progressives against neoliberalism. I mean, this is the far left.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in hearing what they're about, but the hatred, and I'm wondering, like, when it comes to that hatred that you felt, or that darkness, is that characteristic of the entire spirit of the left? Is that what the movement is about, or in all probability, are there some good people as well, some good-hearted Democrats who, perhaps are drinking the Kool-Aid of mainstream media? I mean, what did you sense there from the left? What was it like once folks began to,
question. Yeah. So, well, let me break it down, because there are a few parts of that question. I really, when you look back throughout history and you look at how communism or fascist revolutions take place, there's an exploitation and manipulation of the population that takes place. And of course, not everyone is susceptible to that. And that largely depends on, how much propaganda you're allowing yourself to be inundated with. I think that the majority of the Democratic Party, and I'm not talking about the politicians, but the populace who define themselves as liberals or Democrats, are great people, and they are just seeing what the media decides that they should see, and they wholeheartedly believe that they're righteous and virtuous, and that Trump is the enemy of the state. But what you end up getting with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, which is essentially the same group, they're controlled by the same, masters, they're funded by the same people. You get a group of people who, for whatever reason, and like you were saying with vibration, it may be that they're just more vulnerable to this exploitation. But what happens there is that there's an idea that gets drilled into these people that they are victimized, that they've been victimized for a long time, that they're powerless, and that Donald Trump, the Republican Party, whatever, is the boogeyman, the oppressor. And so they're constantly told that this, group of people or person is victimizing you, and it's building in them like this rage because they believe it. And then you have, with the case of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, you have these paid agitators who come into the groups of people who have been emotionally exploited. And then the agitators come in and they start, kind of poking and prodding and getting people riled up. And then it generates that mob mentality. And some of the stuff that I saw really shocked me. I mean, I do a lot of research and I stay very up to date on everything that's going on, but it was still quite shocking to see, that kind of mob mentality at play. And then of course you get the media twisting it and saying, there's violence and attacks that took place during the MAGA March, and that simply isn't true. Everything that happened took place after the march ended.
That was what I saw based, on, again, very limited mainstream coverage.
Mm-hmm.
But going back just a minute, so you got there in the morning, it was boarded up. It looked like Iran or Fallujah. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I understand. And then people begin to show up, mm-hmm. and for the most part, being born and raised in Western PA, self-employed entrepreneur, most of my business has been serving the working class middle American, so that's kind of my tribe, right? I understand mm-hmm. these guys, the truck driver, the self-employed, the contractor. They tend to be the builders. Most small business people, a lot of people don't realize this about the self-employed, but most self-employed people, the nature of being an entrepreneur is, we want less government. We want to be left alone. We want to do our own thing, right?
Yes.
And these are pretty good people. They're not perfect people. There's idiots among every group, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I saw pictures of people singing the national anthem. I saw pictures of people, standing in solidarity with the things that I grew up, that I was taught in elementary school, were what America was about. Patriotism, the land of the free, the home of the brave, and I find it interesting that today we live in a time where that is actually being characterized or painted as bad, and I see the camera panning now to where gentlemen such as myself who believe in the Second Amendment, who believe in liberty and freedom, could very easily be characterized as white supremacist, racist, bigoted, hate mongers, and I think we're a gnat's eyelash away from that. As it relates the MAGA people, the rank and file supporter of Donald Trump, what did you see there? What kind of spirit, what kind of respect? What did the place look like after it was over? I mean, did you see anything out of bounds?
Really great question as well. I'm definitely, I have a very similar background as you. I'm an entrepreneur. My father is an entrepreneur, but I was also raised in a military family. We have police. So I have, a lot of traditional conservative values, but, I went to a liberal arts college, got a degree in social justice and social movements. And, there are parts of me that really are a bleeding heart liberal. And I was having a conversation with my husband while we were in DC that I have always had the same values. And there was a point in time, 20 years ago, where I was considered a liberal.
Right.
By most people. I mean, I don't really like identity politics, so I don't really define myself either way. But I haven't changed, yet the society has changed and the left has gone so far left that I'm now what's considered alt-right or something. And it's really amazing, and you're absolutely right. These traditional values, are being demonized, by the media. And it's a weird, dynamic. But the experience at the Mega March was like a coming alive of
Wow.
people who share those traditions and those values, and they're really just tired of being told that they're wrong, that they're bad, that they're evil, that they're racist, for embracing those values. And it was amazing. I mean, that was the most, not just the largest group of people I've ever been a part of, but the most diverse. And you had people coming together of all races, ethnicities. You had gay pride for Trump. There were transsexual people. There were just, children, elderly, men, women. It was incredibly diverse. And everyone.
So you're telling me that not everybody there was
a white
a white nationalist, right?
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And it was, actually, I made a Facebook post about this, but really what stood out to me the most was that I probably saw the largest amount of Chinese Americans who were handing out pamphlets about the Chinese Communist Party, who were pleading a case that Americans wake up and save the American Republic from communism before it's too late. And there were all ages of Chinese Americans, but you could really see in the eyes of like the elderly Chinese Americans who were there, just the desperation that like we as Americans wake up and put a stop to this before it's too late, because they came here to get away from that. They've lived it. But it was absolutely peaceful. And another good point that you had was, there wasn't, like litter and trash being thrown around. People were, there were quite a few dogs that had, that were joining the march, with their families. And
sure.
I saw people stopping to, clean up after their dogs.
Right on.
Just a respect towards the city.
Well, they're stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
We love our land. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's how stakeholders behave.
Exactly. And it was just, it was such a movement and feeling of love and unity. And it's really kind of heartbreaking and also infuriating to see the media twist that and try to paint it in another light when it was such a beautiful thing, and then try to, paint BLM and Antifa as victims is disgusting, really.
Yeah. Yes. And you bring up a good point. Now, I'd love to learn more. Perhaps we can do this again sometime about your background and training. Okay.
Yeah.
But, I have studied the Bolshevik Revolution as much as I could, and have my theories on how agitators work. But I can clearly see the narrative here about the 1%, agitating the disenfranchised, pitting one class against another, whether it's race, whether it's economic, whether it's gender. And these people are masters. I have to say, the communists are very good. They have been,
it's
and they
well-oiled
continue.
Machine.
They are fantastic at what they do.
Meticulous strategy.
Meticulous strategy. And the media is in lockstep with them. Whoever are the shot callers, they're doing an excellent job at selling their lotion, potion, pills, etc. So talk to me, you had a good day. Obviously, there were speakers. I know Rose Tennant was there. I know Melanie was there. I know there were many other qualified men and women who probably had much to say, and it was exciting. But you saw some things at the end of the day that you described as being, just challenging. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how did things end up? What went down? What should people know? And what are your thoughts about the movement known as Black Lives Matter and Antifa? Again, maybe not everybody in that group, but let's just say the core values, the architects, the agitators. What's going on?
Yeah. I think it's really important to acknowledge that all Black life matters. and that anyone who has taken issue with the organization Black Lives Matter is not in any way saying that Black life does not matter. In fact, I have relationships with a lot of people of color who, see the truth of what these organizations are. They're not grassroots movements. They are top-down funded organizations that are essentially machines of this driving force behind the communist revolution here in America. And honestly, if you look throughout history at any communist revolution or fascist revolution, you see these same tactics. And that's the reason why they have hijacked our education system. I mean, this is essentially a decades-long strategy. And one of the very first steps is to hijack the education system, which has been going on for 30, 40 years here. And they are not educating in this country about these movements and revolutions because they don't want Americans to recognize what's happening here, because it really is right out of the playbook. It's exactly the same. It's the same tactic used over and over again. And Americans, unfortunately, have fallen for it. And let's hope that we, wake up now and put a stop to it. But the organization Black Lives Matter and Antifa, which, like I said before, are essentially the same organization. They are funded by the same people. They have really the same agenda, and there's really not a distinction. As far as the agitators go, I mean, there's plenty of evidence that these people are paid agitators, because they end up getting arrested, and you find out they're not local. And there's been footage that's come out about recruiting these people. People have found Craigslist ads about paying these people. I mean, it's undeniable that agitators are being hired and planted in these groups at these events to invoke an emotional and eventually physical response from a group of people who, are disenfranchised and have a legitimate concern, but that are being exploited emotionally to drive an agenda. And that, to me, is really the most disheartening part about this, is that people of color are not realizing that they are being further victimized and used as puppets to push an agenda that in the end does not have their best interest at heart. To the core, communism is really just a function of eugenics. Communism is the tool by which the eugenics agenda has played out over and over throughout history. And eugenics, I don't know if you know much about the eugenics movement, which has been going on for 150 years, but that ultimately is completely racist and has this based in some sort of pseudoscience that they can generate a limited and perfect white race of people. And it's eugenics that's behind the communism throughout the world. And yet people of color are allowing themselves to be used and exploited to push that agenda. And the end of the road for that is not going to serve them. And it hurts my heart that people do not see that.
Yeah. I have been told by some of the old timers, from Europe. My family, the Jakopins, were a part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And of course, Czechoslovakia and a lot of places in Europe were ravaged by the Communist Party. In fact, a gentleman reached out to me today on Facebook and copied and pasted some words from a friend who lived through this. But it's exactly as you said. They use the disenfranchised to further an agenda. And then typically, unfortunately, those people groups are often discarded as useful idiots once the agenda has come full force, unfortunately. And I can see that happening. Very quickly, Brad, I don't know how we're doing on time. He's roaming around.
I feel like we're probably going long.
It's good. Well, I think we're good. But bring it to a close. You said there were a few things that were very disturbing. What in particular did you see, and what would you like to say as you know maybe the last closing 5 minutes as we bring this as we land the plane?
Yeah. I totally back the blue. First of all, let me say that. But there was a massive logistics and security breakdown after this event. And I don't want to point fingers at anyone because there were over 1 million people there. And I don't think anyone was prepared for that. But what happened at the end of the event was that the final speaker had directed everyone. The march went up Pennsylvania Avenue, and they had directed everyone to go across and go back down Independence Way. And the reason for that was because they knew that Black Lives Matter and Antifa were there waiting, and they were too cowardly to attack this group of people together. So they were waiting down there as the crowd dissipated to find people who were isolated and vulnerable. And unfortunately, not everyone got that memo, and there were no, police or security telling people not to go this way. And so what resulted were a lot of very disgusting and violent attacks that took place at the hands of Black Lives Matter. And the most disturbing that I saw is that a Black mother who was there with her 3 children being harassed and terrorized by a white woman wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt, part of the Black Lives Matter group. And there was a white man who tried to come to her defense because she's begging and pleading, like, look at what you're doing to my children. And they're relentless. There's like no because of that mob mentality, there's no like consciousness present. And so someone shoved the man and he went toppling into this child, and the child went down, and the police came and detained, not arrested, but detained the man who had gotten shoved. And no one was coming to the assistance of the mother or the children. And it's just baffling to me that things have gotten so convoluted and twisted and distorted that a white woman can inflict this type of terror onto a Black mother and her 3 children. That's a hate crime.
It is a hate
crime. But because it's Black Lives Matter, and the Black mother was a Trump supporter, nothing gets done.
It's okay.
The media covers it up. The police did nothing. And it just makes my blood boil. It's like Black Lives Matter is a name, and that's it. That Black mother's life didn't matter. Her children's lives didn't matter. And we just really, like, my commitment right now is that we need to expose the truth of Black Lives Matter, of Antifa, and how these people of color are being exploited and used.
You sent me over that link because I think I copied and pasted a brief narrative. We'll post that link on the podcast site once this is produced and out there, and that way people can kind of see firsthand what you saw. Okay,
it's like a 2-minute long ordeal, and I'm not sure if I sent you because I have another link. If I didn't send it to you,
resend me what you want on there.
Yeah, because there are dozens of videos of other violent attacks that took place at the hands of BLM, and then you see the media is trying to make light of that and imply that this violence was the result of a mega event, and it absolutely wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the famous clips I think Dinesh D'Souza, republished it today, and it's a picture of that gentleman who kind of reminds me a lot of myself, probably my age, walking, away, and a guy comes up and literally just clocks him around, knocked him right out, face down.
Which is a phone. Then they took his phone.
and somebody steals his phone, but it's a classic cowardly act, which is, that's the thing. And I see this over and over again, whether it was in Portland or Kenosha, that, they're picking off the weak, they're not going to go after the Proud Boys. They're not going to go after, a guy like my son-in-law, Alan, ex-Marine, they're going to go after somebody that's not looking, or the black mother, or whoever carrying the Trump sign. Very interesting. So in closing, and I think you were the one that posted this, it's important, my blood boils too. I get angry, but I think above all of this, one of my favorite texts from sacred scripture is, above everything, have a fervent charity, which is a word for love, right? Because love, the scripture says, covers a multitude of sins or failures, So I think above all of it, as much as we can on every side of the aisle, we've got to walk in love. Wouldn't you agree? And somehow, yes, we've got to tell the truth. I'm all about exposing the bullshit. I'll call a liar a liar. I'll call a deadbeat a deadbeat. Doesn't mean I don't love them, okay? But what are some answers that you might have? How can we, the people, how do we deal with this while we're exposing truth? While we're coming to terms, we want to have good conversation. What's a takeaway? What's something you can share with our listening audience today that might really help us to cope with and walk this out for the benefit of the United States of America?
Yeah, great question, Tom. I think there was one of the signs I saw, and this is a pretty famous quote, but one of the people at the rally had a sign that said, to tell the truth is an act of love. And wow. It absolutely is, and I know that despite the backlash and the criticism and the accusations, that we are coming from a place of love and sharing these truths, that we're fighting for all people, even the people who don't align or agree with us. But I think it's really important not to kind of fuel the fire with people who are confrontational. It was, at the mega event, there was so much love present, and ultimately love and light are the only thing that drive out the darkness. And, right. We need to have compassion for, our brothers and sisters who are find themselves aligning with the Democratic Party right now, and they see only what they're told to see. They know only what they're told to know. And
of course, they would say the same thing about us, right?
I know that. I know. But the thing is, I know. I get it. It's hard. I'm with you. I think about Jesus on the cross saying, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Wow. I think that's a really important and relevant message, that, these people we all have that point, we all have that point where that cognitive dissonance finally gets broken down and we're forced to confront reality. And it's a tough confrontation, especially when you think about people who are in the medical field, or people who, maybe are really vocal on Facebook, or definitely the Black Lives Matter Antifa people, because to come to terms with that reality also requires that you come to terms with your own culpability in participating in that and propagating that. And it's a process that human psychology makes challenging and emotional. And so we just really need to have compassion and understanding for that. These people ultimately are victims. They have been victimized in a lot of ways by, this communist agenda. We all have, and to find commonality in our humanness, and that we're all dealing with this, however, awakened we are to it or not, we're all dealing with it.
Yes, we are. Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, much love, much respect and honor for you. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for being a part of this podcast. Let's do it again, okay?
Please. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it. All right. Thanks again. Tom. Thanks, everybody. Again, the Tom Yakupin Podcast. Visit us online at YouTube. If you like what you see and hear, subscribe, give us a like, share it with others. Also on Facebook. And then I think Brad is populating us all over the universe. That's our goal. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.